On a cold winter morning, the city streets were unusually quiet, with only a few people scattered at bus stops, waiting with their hands tucked into pockets and scarves wrapped tightly around their necks. Among them stood a woman in a sleek black business suit, her hair neatly styled, glasses slightly fogged from her breath, and arms wrapped tightly across her chest as if hugging herself to create warmth. She looked out of place at the bus stop, not because of her attire, but because her presence gave off a certain aura, one of power and composure, even though her shivering frame betrayed her discomfort. Just a few steps away, a young man in his early 30s noticed her. He was dressed in a modest olive green jacket, jeans, and worn-out shoes that had seen many winters. His hands were tucked into his pockets, and his face carried the kind of openness that comes from someone who doesn't overthink kindness, he simply acts on it. Watching her shiver, he felt a tug of compassion. Without a second thought, he slipped off his jacket and walked over. "Here, you look cold," he said softly, offering the jacket. The woman glanced at him, startled at first. She was used to people approaching her with hesitation or calculated intentions, not simple gestures of kindness. For years, her position as a CEO of a well-established company had meant she was surrounded by employees, business partners, and associates who treated her differently, always careful with their words, always expecting something in return. But this stranger didn't know her. To him, she was just another person in the cold, and he only saw her discomfort. Her first instinct was to refuse. Pride and habit made her lips part with a, "No, I'll be fine." But as another gust of icy wind swept through, her body trembled, and she realized she wasn't fine at all. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she accepted the jacket, draping it over her shoulders. The warmth was immediate, but what surprised her more was the warmth she felt in her heart from such an uncalculated act of kindness. They stood side by side, waiting for the bus, neither speaking much. The man didn't push for conversation, didn't ask her name, didn't offer a smile that hinted at hidden motives. Instead, he stared down the road, as if his only concern was whether the bus would arrive soon. The woman, on the other hand, couldn't help but steal glances at him. She wondered who he was, what he did, and why someone like him still existed in a world where so many were driven by self-interest. When the bus finally arrived, they boarded together. The man didn't sit next to her, didn't try to extend the moment longer than it needed to be. He simply found a seat near the middle, while she sat by the window, pulling his jacket tighter around her. As the bus rolled along the frosty streets, she reflected on her life. She had wealth, influence, and power, but when was the last time someone had treated her with such simple humanity? The next day, at her corporate office, a glass tower that loomed over the city, she walked into the boardroom, still thinking about the man from the bus stop. Her executives greeted her formally, ready with reports, presentations, and numbers. Yet, her mind wasn't on business strategies or quarterly profits. Instead, she thought of the way kindness had pierced through the icy walls she had unknowingly built around herself. For years, she had been the CEO who demanded excellence, who rewarded results, who expected efficiency at all times. Her employees admired her success but also feared her sharp tone and unwavering expectations. That morning, however, she entered the boardroom differently. When she smiled, genuinely smiled, it caught everyone off guard. They exchanged surprised looks, wondering what had happened. Later that week, she made an unexpected decision. Her company had been preparing to cut down a project that funded community shelters, labeling it as non-essential to their profit margins. But she overruled the proposal. Instead, she ordered an expansion of funding, doubling the support to help provide coats, warm meals, and safe spaces for those struggling in the city's harsh winter. Her executives were stunned. Some questioned her choice in hushed tones, but she silenced them with a firm explanation. Success isn't just measured in profits, it's measured in the difference we make for others. If we can't remember that, then all our numbers mean nothing. What they didn't know was that her change of heart had begun at that bus stop, with one man and his jacket. Weeks passed, and she couldn't shake the thought of finding him again. Not because she felt indebted, but because she wanted to thank him properly. One evening, after another long day at work, she decided to take the bus home instead of her usual chauffeured car. She wanted to retrace her steps, to see if fate might align once more. And there he was. Same bus stop, same modest clothes, hands tucked into his pockets. She approached with a smile this time, a warmth in her demeanor that was absent the first time they met. He recognized her immediately but didn't make a big deal of it. "You didn't need to come back just to return the jacket," he said casually when she handed it to him, freshly dry cleaned. "It's more than that," she replied, her voice gentle yet steady. "I wanted to thank you. You reminded me of something important, that kindness still matters. You changed the way I see things." He looked at her, puzzled, almost embarrassed by the weight of her words. "It was just a jacket," he said with a shrug. "No," she answered firmly, "it was never just a jacket. It was humanity. It was a reminder that no matter who we are or what we've achieved, we're all people who need warmth, compassion, and connection. From that day on, their paths intertwined more often. Sometimes she would see him at the bus stop, and they would share small conversations about life, about simple joys, about things that had nothing to do with titles or money. To him, she wasn't a CEO. To her, he wasn't just a stranger. They were two souls who had crossed paths in the cold and found warmth in each other's presence. As time went on, she invited him to one of her company's charity events, insisting he see what his gesture had inspired. He stood there among executives, philanthropists, and community leaders, looking slightly out of place but deeply moved when she gave a speech and mentioned him, not by name, but by story. Sometimes, it's not the grand gestures that change the world, she said to the audience. Sometimes, it's a small act of kindness at a bus stop, a moment of selflessness that ripples into countless lives. That one act reminded me why leadership isn't about control or profit, it's about humanity. The room erupted in applause, but her eyes found his in the crowd, and she smiled knowingly. He gave a small nod, still humble, still unconvinced that his jacket had changed much. But in reality, it had changed everything. Life moved forward, but the impact of that single act never faded. Her company became known not only for its success but also for its commitment to social responsibility. Her employees began to notice the change in her leadership style, too. She listened more, smiled more, and carried herself with a grace that was both approachable and inspiring. The woman who once seemed untouchable had become a leader people admired not just for her results, but for her heart. And all of it began because a man, waiting for a bus, decided to share his jacket. The story is a reminder that in a world rushing toward personal success, it's often the smallest gestures that leave the deepest impact. We never know who the stranger next to us might be or how our kindness could shape their journey. Sometimes, offering warmth to another person does more than protect them from the cold, it melts the ice around their heart and sets in motion a chain of change that touches lives far beyond what we can imagine. So next time you find yourself at a crossroads where you can choose to look away or to help, remember this story. Because the truth is, kindness costs us nothing but can mean everything. And who knows, the person you help might just be someone who changes the world.